Here is the moment that started everything. On the 9th of June 2026, a man appeared on Channels Television Sunrise Daily and told the country that Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of the Nigeria Democratic Congress, had personally supervised the extortion of House of Representatives aspirants. That man was Kenneth Okonkwo, actor, lawyer, and the very person who just 3 years ago stood on 1,000 stages across Nigeria calling Peter Obi the future of this country. He named his source. He said the source, a man called Obunike Ohaegbu, an NDC aspirant from Newi, had sent him an SOS message, a payment receipt, and had told him directly and explicitly that Peter Obi was, and I'm quoting, the head of the criminality. 24 hours later, that same Obunike Ohaegbu sat in that same studio on that same channel and said, "I never said any such thing. Peter Obi never asked me for 10 million naira. I never told Kenneth Okonkwo that Peter Obi is a criminal." So here's the question nobody is asking clearly enough. If Okonkwo's source publicly denied every word he attributed to him, who exactly is Kenneth Okonkwo's evidence against? Stay with me, because this story is not really about a defamation lawsuit. It is about what happens when political betrayal stops wearing a mask. Before we go any further, if you are new to this channel, welcome. Naija Insight Desk exists for one reason: to give you the kind of analysis that goes beyond the headlines and the noise. Subscribe now, because this conversation is about to get deeper. To understand what happened last week, you need to understand what happened 3 years ago. In 2022, Kenneth Okonkwo left the APC. He did not drift quietly. He left loudly, publicly, and with conviction, citing Tinubu's Muslim ticket as a line he could not cross. He walked into the Labour Party, embraced Peter Obi, and became one of the most visible faces of the obedient movement. He was the national spokesperson of DAPO, Dynamics Ambassadors for Peter Obi. He campaigned, he appeared on television, he urged Igbo people, he urged all Nigerians to follow this man. Then came 2023, the election results that millions of Nigerians still dispute, and after that came the fracture. By July 2024, Okonkwo was done. He resigned from the Labour Party in a lengthy public statement, accusing Obi of failing to build the party structure the movement had fought to create. He joined the African Democratic Congress, the NDC, and has since aligned himself with Atiku Abubakar's 2027 presidential bid. His language about Obi shifted from brotherly disappointment to open antagonism. Now here's the critical context the noise obscures. When Okonkwo walked onto Channels TV on June 9, 2026, he was not speaking as a neutral citizen journalist. He was speaking as a chieftain of a rival party whose presidential candidate is in direct competition with Peter Obi in 2027. That does not automatically make what he said false, but it is the baseline any serious analyst must establish before evaluating anything else. What exactly did he allege? He claimed that during the NDC's recent primary elections across the southeast, aspirants for House of Representative seats were pressured to pay 10 million naira each and senatorial aspirants 20 million naira in exchange for party tickets. He claimed Peter Obi did not merely know about this, he orchestrated it. He further alleged that rather than supervising transparent primaries, Obi retreated to the John Wood Hotel in Abuja and personally handwrote a list of preferred candidates, some of whom had not won or even participated in actual primaries. His named source for all this, Obunike Ohaegbu. The next day, Obunike Ohaegbu denied it, completely, publicly, on camera. So here's where this story begins and where it gets genuinely complicated. Okonkwo then released WhatsApp screenshots he says prove Obunike told him everything. But if the screenshots exist, why did Obunike still deny it? We'll get to that, because the answer tells you everything about how political pressure works right now in Nigeria. Let us set aside the political drama for a moment and ask the institutional question. How are party primaries actually supposed to work under Nigerian law? The Electoral Act 2022 is explicit. Under Section 84, party places are required to conduct primaries in a manner that is transparent, democratic, and in line with the party's own constitution. The Independent Electoral Commission, INEC, is empowered to monitor those primaries. Results must be submitted to INEC, and only candidates who emerge from validly conducted primaries are eligible to receive party certificates. That's the law. The standard is clear. Now here's where the institutional failure begins, not with Peter Obi specifically, but with a systemic pattern that has infected every major party in Nigeria. The gap between what the law says and what party primaries actually look like in practice is vast, well documented, and largely unchallenged. Candidate selection in Nigeria has for decades operated as a shadow economy. Expression of interest forms, nomination forms, consultation fees, mobilization funds, party development contributions. The labels change, the practice does not. What Okonkwo alleged, if true, would be consistent with that pattern, and that's precisely why it gained traction, not because he provided irrefutable proof, but because it confirmed what many Nigerians already believed to be possible. But here's where the institutional analysis must be honest. Okonkwo's central claim rests on a single named source who has since publicly disavowed the version of events attributed to him. The WhatsApp screenshots Okonkwo subsequently released are contested. They show Obunike expressing frustration with the primary process and questioning a candidate list, but they do not, by themselves, establish that Peter Obi personally demanded money from anyone. There's a difference between a party aspirant expressing grievances about a messy and opaque selection process, which is entirely plausible, and that aspirant directly accusing a presidential candidate of running an extortion ring. Okonkwo conflicted those two things, and that conflation is at the heart of the legal action now unfolding. Peter Obi's legal team, led by Chief Alex Ejesieme SAN, filed a pre-action letter on June 9, 2026, the same day as the broadcast. The demands: a full public retraction within 7 days, an apology broadcast on Channels Television and across all Okonkwo's social media platforms, and 5 billion naira in damages for injury to reputation. The NDC lawyers group followed with a 48-hour ultimatum. Okonkwo's response: he doubled down. He released the WhatsApp screenshots. He called on anti-corruption agencies, the EFCC and relevant security services to open a formal investigation into the NDC's finances. He cited his professional duty as a lawyer to disclose evidence of crime. So what we now have is this: an allegation, a denial by the named source, contested digital evidence, and a 5 billion naira lawsuit, all unresolved, all escalating. The court, if it gets there, will have to determine whether Okonkwo's statements were false and made with malicious intent, or whether they were a genuine, if imprecise, attempt to relay information he received in good faith. That's a high bar in Nigerian defamation law, and neither outcome is predetermined. Now, let us talk about what this is really about. Because if you think this is a story about 10 million naira and a WhatsApp chat, you are looking at the wrong level of the chessboard. Kenneth Okonkwo did not wait until the eve of a primary season by accident. He did not choose Channels Television, Nigeria's most watched political platform, by accident. And he did not name Peter Obi as his specific target by accident. Every element of that intervention was calibrated. The question is, calibrated for whose benefit? Kenneth Okonkwo is now firmly in the NDC orbit. The NDC has positioned Atiku Abubakar, a northern Muslim, a veteran of the PDP establishment, as its 2027 presidential candidate. For Atiku to win in 2027, he needs one thing above all else. He needs the southeast, or at least significant portions of it, to withhold their votes from the NDC, because Peter Obi, whatever his organizational shortcomings, has a loyal base in Igbo land and among the Nigerian middle class that no other opposition candidate can replicate. If Okonkwo can corrode that loyalty, if he can plant the idea that Obi is not the clean, incorruptible alternative, but just another party boss running the same machinery, then Atiku's coalition calculation changes. Obedient voters who feel disillusioned either stay home or they consider an alternative. Either outcome weakens NDC's floor. That is the strategic logic. You do not have to believe Okonkwo is lying to see it. Now, look at who benefits from the damage, even if the allegations are never proven. The APC benefits, the PDP benefits, the NDC benefits. Peter Obi is the only major opposition figure who has demonstrated the capacity to mobilize the kind of cross-ethnic, youth-driven coalition that could theoretically threaten Tinubu in 2027. Weakening his credibility before the election season is fully underway is worth something to more than one player. And now, look at who is conspicuously silent. INEC has said nothing about the NDC primary process, despite being the institution legally empowered to monitor it. The EFCC, which Okonkwo explicitly invited to investigate, has not commented. Within the NDC itself, the loudest response has come from the legal team and from Senator Seriake Dickson, who issued a technical clarification about nomination fees rather than a comprehensive rebuttal of the process. That silence is its own kind of data. Now, what does this mean for 2027? In the short term, it forces the NDC into a defensive posture at exactly the wrong moment. Rather than consolidating its primary results and building toward a general election campaign, the party is now spending political capital on a defamation response and trying to manage the optics of contested primaries. In the medium term, watch the Southeast. The Igbo political space is not monolithic. It never has been. There are voices within that zone who were already skeptical of Peter Obi's move from Labour to NDC. This controversy gives those voices a new set of questions to amplify. That is not nothing. Now, if what you just heard challenges what you thought you knew, drop it in the comments. I want to hear your read on this before we get to the part that reframes everything. Here is the detail almost nobody is discussing. Kenneth Okonkwo is not an NDC member. He has no standing to demand refunds for NDC aspirants. He is a chieftain of the ADC, a rival party. Ask yourself, when was the last time you saw a politician go to bat for the victims of a party he is actively competing against? And if the answer is never, then why now and why this particular story? Zoom out, because this is not just a Southeast story. Every time a credible allegation of internal party corruption surfaces and then is denied, contested, and litigated without ever reaching a definitive institutional resolution, something corrosive happens to Nigerian democracy. Not in a dramatic, immediate way, cumulatively, quietly. It tells the ordinary aspirant, the person who raised money from their community, who paid forms, who participated in a primary, that the rules of the game are written for insiders, that your investment in the process is only protected if you are willing to become a witness for someone else's political agenda. It tells the voter that the opposition is not structurally different from the government, that the NDC, despite its branding as a movement of civic renewal, is subject to the same frailties as the parties it criticizes. And it tells the diaspora, the UK, the US, Canada, South Africa, who have bet their hope on a particular vision of Nigerian political reform, that the bet may be more complicated than it looked. None of this means NDC is irredeemably broken, and none of this means the allegations are proven. But credibility is not built in courts, it's built in the gap between what a party claims to be and what it demonstrably does. The NDC was built, in large part, on Peter Obi's moral authority. That's its greatest asset, and it's also the thing that makes this particular controversy more damaging than it would be to any other party. For ordinary Nigerians below the policy conversation, the trader in Newi, the graduate in Awka who believed in this project, the signal is simple. Even the good ones play the game. That's the most dangerous outcome of this entire episode. Not the lawsuit, not even the allegation. It's the erosion of the baseline belief that things can be different. Briefly, because this matters, Nigeria right now is the most watched democracy on the African continent in the lead-up to a major election cycle. The 2027 general elections are not merely a domestic affair. They are a test case for whether civic mobilization, opposition coalition building, and institutional accountability can produce a democratic transfer of power in Africa's largest economy. The international community, the EU election observers missions, the Carter Center, the US State Department Africa Bureau, British parliamentary monitors watch Nigeria's pre-election conduct with particular attention to how parties treat their own internal processes. If the NDC cannot demonstrate that its primaries were conducted transparently, it weakens the moral argument it is building for its entire 2027 campaign. For the Nigerian diaspora, the situation is acutely felt. Many in the obedient communities across London, Houston, Toronto, and Johannesburg invested not just hope, but active campaign energy and in some cases money in the Peter Obi project. What they need from the NDC right now is not a legal threat. They need transparency. They need to see that the party is capable of holding itself accountable in the way it demands accountability from others. That distinction between threatening the messenger and interrogating the message is one the NDC's leadership has not yet made clearly enough.
Let us steelman the case for Kenneth Okonkwo. The strongest version of his argument is not actually about Peter Obi personally. It is about systemic party corruption, a problem that is real, documented, and cross-party. If aspirants were genuinely pressured to pay fees beyond what the party's own rules permitted, they deserve to know that someone named it publicly. The fact that Okonkwo is an ADC chieftain does not automatically make the underlying concern false. Nigerian history is full of cases where whistleblowers with political motivations happened to be factually correct. Furthermore, his point about the John Wood Hotel, about candidate lists being produced outside the primary process, raises a legitimate structural question. If those lists deviated from primary results, that is an INEC compliance issue, not merely a defamation dispute. The appropriate response to that allegation is not a lawsuit. It is a transparent account of how the candidate list was produced, verified against INEC monitoring records. Now, the misconceptions. The biggest one circulating on social media is the framing of this as simply Okonkwo exposing Peter Obi. That framing erases the most important fact in the story. The named source denied the central claim. That does not mean the denial is true. Pressure can be applied in many directions, but a responsible reading of this story must hold the denial in view at all times, not treat it as an inconvenient footnote. The second misconception is that the 5 billion naira lawsuit is a sign of guilt. It is not. Defamation law exists precisely because public accusations, even untrue ones, can cause irreparable reputational harm. Filing suit is a legitimate legal response. It is neither an admission nor a cover-up. The third is that this is purely an Igbo internal affair. It is not. The NDC is a national party with presidential ambitions. What happens in the Southeast primaries has implications for how the party performs nationally in 2027. Stop and consider this. The WhatsApp screenshots Okonkwo released show Ohaegbu questioning the primary process, not explicitly accusing Peter Obi of taking his money. Those are two meaningfully different things. One is a party member expressing frustration, the other is evidence of a criminal scheme. Okonkwo treated them as equivalent. The court may not. 3 things to watch. First, whether Peter Obi's legal team actually proceeds to court. The pre-action letter gave Okonkwo 7 days to retract. He did not retract, he doubled down. If Obi proceeds to litigation, the discovery process will become the most important development in this story. Both sides will be compelled to produce evidence. Okonkwo's WhatsApp screenshots will be scrutinized. The NDC's primary records will be examined. What is currently a political controversy will become a documented legal record. Second, whether INEC or any anti-corruption agency responds to Okonkwo's explicit invitation to investigate the NDC's primary finances. If they do, the NDC faces enormous institutional pressure precisely when it needs operational focus. If they do not, if the agencies remain silent, that silence will become part of Okonkwo's narrative, that the system protects its own. Third, watch Ohaegbu himself.
He has now denied the allegations publicly, but he has also, in the WhatsApp exchanges Okonkwo published, placed his name on record with grievances about the process. He is now a contested figure in a political lawsuit. What he does next, whether he speaks again, whether he is supported or pressured by the NDC, will tell you something real about the party's internal culture. If the current trajectory holds, no retraction, no institutional investigation, litigation filed, the damage to both principles intensifies. Okonkwo risks a costly defamation finding. Obi risks the drip effect of allegations that, even unproven, reshape how undecided voters see him. The 12-month question is whether the NDC can pivot from this episode towards a credible policy platform for 2027, or whether the primary controversy becomes the defining story of the pre-election year. The 3-year question is larger. If the NDC loses in 2027, this period will be examined closely for how early and how preventable the erosion of trust actually was. Here is what the lawsuit cannot resolve: whether the NDC's primaries were actually transparent. Peter Obi can win the defamation case and still lose the political argument if the party never answers the procedural questions directly. A court ruling in his favor is not the same as accountability, and his supporters deserve to understand that distinction. We began with a question. If Okonkwo's source publicly denied every word attributed to him, who exactly is his evidence against? Here is the honest answer. Based on what is publicly verifiable as of today, Okonkwo's allegations are contested, his primary source has retracted, and his digital evidence supports a picture of internal party frustration but does not definitively establish the criminal scheme he described on national television. That matters. Words on Channels TV carry weight that a single WhatsApp thread does not automatically justify. At the same time, the NDC cannot simply sue its way to credibility. The party's response has been reactive, legalistic, and strategically defensive. What it has not been is transparent. Peter Obi's greatest political strength has always been the perception that he operates differently. If that perception takes sustained damage before the campaign even begins, the lawsuit may resolve the legal question while leaving the political problem entirely open. And for Kenneth Okonkwo, a man who campaigned for Peter Obi across every time zone, who called him the future of Nigeria, the question worth sitting with is this: is this principled accountability, or is this what betrayal sounds like when it finds a legal argument to stand behind? I do not have a verdict, neither should you, yet. What I have is that the evidence as it stands does not support the most explosive version of Okonkwo's claim, but the questions he raised about the NDC's primary process are not yet answered. Both of those things can be true at the same time. This story is not over, and the unresolved thread you should be watching is this: what did INEC actually observe during the NDC's primaries, and why haven't we heard from them? If this analysis gave you clarity, not agreement, clarity, share it with one person who needs to understand what is actually happening. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.